yarn lovers, it's Gary and I'm coming to you from Vancouver, Canada. So welcome. Today's Wednesday, April 29th, 2020 and this is video number 50. So I'm coming to you today to show results of my dyeing experiment that I did on various types of yarns in the kitchen over the weekend. And many of them were successes, I guess, and many of them were flops. So I'm going to be talking about what I intend to do with these yarns that didn't quite hit the mark, and also to showcase the things that I'm pleased with and happy with. So I did use food color in this experiment on my dyes, and I cheated with one color, which in particular was the yellow. Aztec Gold was not a food dye, but I wanted to add that into the experiment because I was noticing that the food dye yellow was not coming out the way that I wanted it to. So yes, before I get going, and if you've just arrived to this video and thinking what this is all about, hi, my name's Gary and I'm the host of Urban Yarn. I have set up this channel to talk about my knit, crochet projects that I work on, so anything yarny, and I've just started doing some hand dyeing in the kitchen. Nothing on a massive scale, just like, you know, maybe half a dozen here and there of skeins, or even knitted garments or crocheted garments that I've finished sometimes end up in the dye pot. So I hope that you'll sit back and enjoy the next little while I showcase the hand dyed experiments. And if you do like what I share with you, please think about subscribing. Hit that like button and give me a thumbs up. And yeah, so if you have been with me for a while or just recently and are returning, welcome back. So let's start off with the objective of this experiment, where I was using these coasters and getting colors from these as inspiration. So I'm going to insert a couple of clips in here where I will come back and then talk about the results of each of the aspects that I went through in the dye experiment. So enjoy the little clip. Hey there, fiber friends. Here we are in the kitchen. I am preparing for my little dye experiment here on my yarn, but prior to doing that, I am going to be using the coasters that I'm using as my source of inspiration. I'm going to mix up some food color dyes to match colors, and I'm going to sample on these paper towels. So they're just the ordinary paper towels that you get in your store on the roll, and I'm going to brush them in to test the colors out when I mix up the different colors. Okay, so after a little bit of experimenting here, I have a couple of options with colors. So, as you can see, my contraption here is a kind of coat hanger wire that I'm putting my cotton, and I am draping it into the mixture of the orange. And what I'm going to do is let that simmer for a little while, and you can already see that it's sort of bleeding up. This one here is the Loops and Threads cream cotton, and it's kind of sucking up right now, and what I'm hoping to achieve is like having a fade. And this is the second batch of the purpley blues, and I ran out of the red, so I kind of had to go with the whatever I had left over in the jars. And so unfortunately I am going more purpley blue than purpley red. So as you can tell by the pot that had the first I believe it was like an orangey color that I had concocted, I had put on the rod these 4 skeins, So they were sitting in the orange, and I was noticing that the color, after washing it out, it'd sit in there for a while, but then when I pulled it out to kind of test the results of the color, the yellow wasn't taking, or the orange wasn't taking to the actual fiber. So I had thrown in some Aztec Gold, which is a different chemical that goes in and created this orangey color here, like a gold orange color. And so my biggest lesson that I had learned in this particular food dye experiment was that cotton and plant-based fibers do not actually hold or retain food dye. And yeah, so it pulled out of the tub of dye, or the pot of dye, or the pan that I was doing my experiment in, and looked like it was collecting the pigment, but when I went to wash the yarn, all of that pigment just drained out into the water. So I don't know scientifically what happened with the reason why food dye does not adhere to plant-based like cotton, or I believe that also linen. But one of my biggest inspiration points that I have been watching for a number of months now, maybe up to 6 months, has been Rebecca from ChemKnits. And she was the one who initially inspired me to get into the kitchen to try out all these experiments. So I just recently rewatched some of her videos, and she talked about how food dye does not happen to adhere to a plant-based fiber like cotton, because there's no protein for it to, I guess, bond with. So I'm not too sure what that means scientifically. I'm kind of like, I ran into the kitchen blind with a lot of these experiments that I went into this weekend. But yeah, it did collect a little bit of the red dye and made it a slight pinkish color. But that was probably because there was quite a lot of red food dye in the pot when I had done the experiment with this particular cotton. Now this one here is going to be going back into the pan, and I have ordered some iDye, which it says it is used for cotton, linen, polyester, so or nylon, I should say, sorry. So this one will have speckling done on it, and this one here was the Michael's cream, I think it was called cream cotton. It's Michael's cream cotton by Loops and Thread, and yeah, so it came out very nice in the as a graduation of color, or gradient of color, I should say, from the Aztec Gold that I had used when I thought, oh, you know what, I need to rely on something that's going to adhere to the base. So, and then the food dye of the red created this pink pastel-y color. So that's going to go back into the experiment with more iDye's color range sprinkled on the top. Now these ones here were from Knit Picks, and it was originally this color, and that one is from their Color Mist series, and this particular colorway is called River Bluff, and this is the original state of the hank. And these ones were also draped in at the same time into the pot with the cream cotton from Loops and Thread, and also had the pink, which is barely noticeable, added to the other half. So the graduation from the Aztec Gold and the red food color dye that created this pinkish color. That is also going to go back in to get speckled, and I got 3 of those in that colorway. So those 3 are going to go in with that Michael's. And then this one here was a little bit of a mop-up, And this one was Wool Easy from Hobium Yarn, and it has a base of 80% acrylic and 20% wool, and it just mopped up the rest of that red that was kind of just sitting there waiting to be soaked up. So I used it on this particular skein, and originally it was a kind of a bluish grey colour, so I've got a nice space there to then put some coloured specks on as well, and that's going to go back in as soon as I get my new colours from the iDye range. And for the Aztec as well, I had a little bit of the Good Earth, which is universal yarns, in the colorway Safari, and I just threw that, which is like a beige color, and I threw that in to soak up the rest of the Aztec Gold that was in that pot, and achieved this golden delicious ball. So that was a really neat result as well. So that's ready to go. That's not actually going to go back into the experiment. I'm going to use that one. And now in the pan, if you recall the video where I showed the part where I had my first pan set up, I had laid out these three beauties here, and it was in this order that they had been laid out in the pan. So we had, I'm just going to take off the band so that you can see the colorway. So the first one that was in the lineup was Lamia Natural Wool, and this was 100% wool, so that actually took all of the food dye the best, and I got these really vibrant, beautiful colors, which is a very close call to the coasters. That really was a great representation of the coasters. And then in the middle part was the Wool Easy with the 80% acrylic and 20% wool. Used the same colors, but came out a little bit more sort of romantic and like a little bit more romantic of a color palette. Softer colors and softer blends than the wool. And the third one was from Hobium Yarns, and it was the Madame Trocca Paris. You can't see that, there we go. And it's their Cashmere Gold. And this one also was more of a pastel-y kind of result. It's sort of in the middle of the two. So the first one, the 100% wool, was the most striking. The second one that was in the middle of the pan was the Wool Easy. That's kind of like pastel-y, and then this one here was somewhere in between. So really, really nice results there. Then the next pan that I had was a setup of 3 as well, and this was these 3 items. Actually, it was a setup of 4. Just trying to remember how they were in the pan. Okay, so it was like this. So that's how these ones were set up, and it consisted of 2 Knit Picks Stroll Sport, and the makeup of these 2 were a combination of superwash merino and nylon, and this one is Katopu's Angora Natural, which has a combination of acrylic, wool and mohair. So this one was really interesting. I'll show you this in a moment. And then this one again was 100% cotton, and I had poured a lot of the green color from the food dye on top, and it just gave me a very slight hint of that green. So not very well, because that's the original on the top, and then the bottom is just a slight tinge of green. So I'm going to showcase the results by pulling off the labels. So these two here are the knit picks, and they really worked up well to the last coaster. Really super nice. And the Kartopu one, which is a combination of the wool, mohair and acrylic, had dyed the halo, which ended up being a lovely effect. I like that. Didn't really dye the actual strand, like the base of the strand, but it dyed everything around it. So I really like that, and I'm interested in finding out how that works up, because it lends to more of the outer halo being the interest, and just the base is kind of like a whiter beige base. Really like that. I'll just unravel it so you can see it. So yeah, it could do a really nice almost cowl or scarf with lots of open holes or patterning in the stitch work. Just really like that. It's so cool. And the other things that I did was with the pot, how I had the rod going across, I had tried a couple of other experiments with that, and I got more pastel-y colors with using the Mary Maxim's alpaca, natural alpaca, and it's in this tweed. So all the tweed remained on there and the color of the tweed stayed the same. But that was an experiment, and it's very close to also this purpley, is it the right one that I'm showing you? Yeah, it's like the purpley color one here. Ooh, there we go. And what I'll do is I'll unravel one of the bands so that you can see. And this one is, it is 77 acrylic, 20% alpaca, and 3% viscose, which I think is the tweedy bits. And these came out wonderful and silky. So yeah, it's got like a combination of the red food dye and the purplish kind of blue that they have in that pack. So in the clip as well, I showcase what package of food dye that I purchased. I don't know what number, what color, what name of the product that I got, but I'll include that in the description box below so that you can see what food dye colors, packages that I had used. The other thing that I did was I wanted to drape in a scarfie as well to see what it would do. So this is the original base in, it's Lion Brand scarfie in the colorway Silver Cream, and I had a whole hank of this, and I draped it over the rod into the dye pot, and this is what I got. So I had I think it was the orange color first that I had hung this in, and it didn't really take, but I do see hints of the orange on the cream part of the skein. And then I twisted it, rotated it into one that had more purpley blue colors, and that one I can see a lot more. So yeah, I'm happy with the results of this one as well. It did alter the integrity of the yarn itself. It flattened it down, but it might be quite a novelty yarn to use in the end because the strands are now a little bit more roving, I guess, style. So it kind of flattened them a little bit. It's not as round and fluffy as the original. So, and the mull part that it fades from the grey to the cream, that is no longer apparent in the dyed result. So it's an experiment. So I would say that this one was probably not a success, but did create a novelty yarn that may be okay for something, I don't know what. So I had a lot of fun in the kitchen playing around with all of these different colors, the food dye, learning a lesson about how cotton and plant-based fibers don't really gel very well with the product that I had used, which was a food-based dye. And so yeah, I've got a few things that are going to go back into the kitchen, and I'd love to showcase when I get my new iDye, which is on its way to me. I'm going to be speckling on top of these few skeins here, so I'm going to leave them hanged up as they are. And I have new colors that I've ordered, so I'm going to include them in this mix here. And very summery. This is what I like about the color choices as well, that kind of were inspired by those tiles. And I'm going to be, I've got black as well. I want to do some speckling in black to see how it bounces off a base color like this one here. I also have a few other, what were they called? The cream cotton from Loops and Threads at Michael's. I have already, like it's a mustardy color that I'm going to be also striking with some speckles as well. So I can see what happens when the base of the yarn is more of a vibrant color to begin with. So really happy with the results of this experiment, and I had learned so much from them. So I'm happy. What can I say? It's all great. And I will come back to you in the next video to showcase what I've been working on. I've got a few things that I've began knitting, and I'm using up some of my own hand-dyed yarn. So I'd love to showcase those with you in the next video. Okay, see you later. Bye.